This time we're going to have Chief White to come up and to do the prayer. And we are going to ask that you would be kind enough if you would stand for a few minutes of silence for 9/11. And Chief is going to lead us in prayer, and after which we ask that you remain standing, and I will tap the hammer for 3 times, and then you may be seated. Councilman Telefair, would you have a word of expression for the 9/11 at this time? And then we will go for silence.
You know, mere words cannot express the gratitude of those who gave their lives on September 11th. I don't think there's anyone in this room that doesn't remember where they were when the Twin Towers fell. We are so eternally grateful for their sacrifice, for our freedom, and the way that we conduct ourselves today and always as public servants. Let us be mindful of that sacrifice that they gave, and let it be for naught. Because there are families hurting today, years later, after those towers fell. And we need to be mindful of those and pray for those families every day.
Thank you. You may be seated. The Pledge of Allegiance, Councilman Taylor.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you be kind enough to call the roll, please?
Present.
Here.
Here, ma'am. Here.
I'm here. Thank you. On tomorrow, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting Wednesday, August 16, 2023, administrative conference meeting Monday, August 21st, 2023, and the city council meeting Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023. Does any member of the council have any awards, recognition, or distinguished guests not to exceed 15 minutes?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to call up Ms. Sharon Johnson, please. Ms. Johnson, thank you all so much for coming. I would like for you to speak to the civil rights activities that are going to take place September 21st in our city commemorating the 60-year anniversary.
Sure. Thank you all for having us. We are a group of alumni from the Booker T. Washington High School, the historic Booker T. Washington High School. This coming September, it will be 60 years since the beating of Dr. Harry Blake and the student march, where the students were stopped from peacefully protesting the beating. And so because we have a new principal, it was her desire, along with ours, to make sure that we never forget where we came from, the struggles that we've had. 60 years is a long time. We are not where we were. We've made progress, but more so we're looking forward to the future, how we come together as a school, as a community, as civic leaders to make sure that our city is the best that it can possibly be. On here, the video that you have, it just shows a 1-minute depiction of the things that actually happened in September. And so we don't ever want to forget where we came from. We want to do better than what we've done in the past. So what I've done is I brought with me our team who has worked tirelessly for more than 11 months to pull this recognition together. And one by one, I'll ask them if they would like to, offer just a couple of words of encouragement to our city.
Thank you, Ms. Sharon, to members of the council, Mayor Arsenault. I'd like to thank my Chief of Police, Chief Wayne Smith, for allowing me to share this video with the students at BTW last year. I'm a BTW alumni. It's emotional for me. My aunt was at school that day, so I will be finishing the march on her behalf. Thank you.
Good afternoon to Mayor Arsenault and other members of the council. On September 21st, to start these events off, we will be presenting a production entitled Shreveport Rising, We've Come This Far by Faith. It's a 2-act documentary drama about the civil rights movement of Shreveport. It is written by national playwright and screenwriter David Barr and will be directed by yours truly. It will be held at Booker T. Washington High School next Thursday at 7:30 p.m. I'm asking all of you to come out and support that event. I keep looking at Tabitha because she was with me the first time we did this production at the Strand, and she went all the way with me. And so I'm asking everyone to come out and support us next Thursday at 7:30 p.m. at Booker T. Washington High School.
Vincent,
Yes, sir.
how you gonna come down here and not speak to me, Vincent, and speaking to Ms. Taylor?
I said to all council members. I'm sorry, Pastor Green. I knew you would be the one that would pick on me.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is Robert Jackson. I'll be directing the parade. I want to get out of Calvin Austin's way real quick. I want to make 2 points. One, if I was interviewed last time we did this 10 years ago, the reporter thought that I was in the class of 1966. I was 63. I was 3 years old. So I may have gray hair like him, but I was 3 years old. I was not in the march. But I would like to invite all department heads, city leaders, community leaders to come down to show that Shreveport is no longer that city that it was in 1963. So you're all invited. We have a front row seat for you reserved. In history, we'll place you in the parade. You can invite your staff, hopefully invite your pastor, your friends, whomever you like. But we have a space for you reserved. Look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you. Pastor Austin.
I don't think I need to call my name. I think everybody pretty much know, but I'm H. Calvin Austin III. This project came about under the auspices of the principal of Booker Washington, Dr. Barnes. She was talking to her students regarding what took place in Shreveport in 1963. I was a student. I witnessed the beating of Pastor Blake. I spent 45 days in the Shreveport jail. I've said to every police chief we've had, when they tear it down, I want a brick. But on next Friday at high noon, we will have the reenactment, and if the Lord said the same and I'm still here, we're going to finish the march. We have a unique press coverage that's going to come and cover this. ABC, NBC,
CNN.
CBS, HLN, CNN, the Washington Post, because Shreveport, my brothers and sisters, has come a long way since 1963. The conversation is, Pastor Austin, where do you see us now? I see Shreveport now worse than where it was. Worse than where it was, Mayor, in 1963. At least in 1963, we were talking to each other. We're not talking no more. We're disrespecting each other. I look at you men and women up there. I see there's an animosity brewing in this place. But next Friday, if you can and if you will, come and be a part of it. Let the people of this city know, as the mayor says, and I've been saying it for months, I love Shreveport too. I could have went anywhere in the world. I came back to Shreveport. This is my home. I love this city. Please, sir, please, ma'am. Thank you, Council Lady, for making this take place.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes. In closing, what I'd like to do is just express my appreciation to Chief Smith and his staff. They
Chief
have
Smith out
worked.
there?
Yes, there he
Chief
is.
Smith, would you come up? Because you were a part of the events of that day. And as you, Ms. Lister, I'll be walking on behalf of my dad, who was a student at Booker T at the time.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Chief Smith. You've opened your department to us, and anything I've asked you for, you've done that. So thank you very much. This is important to our city. I look at where we are today, and I pray that we can move forward, working together. It is a city with multiple cultures, multiple people. This is our city, and we are responsible for moving the city forward. So in closing, I'd just like to invite everyone out, come and give your support. We will have a lot of national coverage here. The spotlight will be on Shreveport. And so we want to make sure that we can be an example for other cities that have had to overcome some of the obstacles that we've had to endure, and that, you know, we are willing to work together. So thank you all, I appreciate it.
So, thank you so much, Ms. Johnson. Mr. Mayor, on last year, I sponsored legislation offering an apology to the students of Booker T. Washington for the events that occurred in 1963, as well as Little Union Baptist Church. And Crystal Barnes, who is the principal of Booker T. Washington, who is also a graduate of Booker T. Washington, wanted to ensure that the students at the school would be able to participate in this march 60 years later. And so the students that attended, that are still alive at this time, you know, gave their visual depictions of what happened with George Dortors and the amount of racism that was felt within the city of Shreveport at that time. So we feel that it is, you know, I wouldn't want to say in celebration, but in honor of those individuals who were brave enough to say, no, you're not going to walk on our campus and you're not going to do this to our students, that we are tired of the oppressor oppressing. And we want to make sure that we have our rights to freedom. So with that being said, I'm going to ask that you join me when we are marching on Friday at noon and at 1 o'clock. I'm going to ask other council members to do that as well, as we want to make sure that we do not keep the barrier of racism alive within our city. So thank you all so very much.
Thank you.
You have anyone else? Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Leon Wheeler. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Leon Wheeler with the City of Shreveport Department of Fair Share. Today I want to give public appreciation to a few people who, back in July, took the time, helped organize an event. You know, a lot of the things that goes on in our neighborhood that's good don't get told. It was real quick to point out the negative, the crime, and those type things, which they are important to disclose. However, you have a lot of good things that's going on in our neighborhood. We had over 10 contractors go out in the month of July. We found over 20 homes that need repair. You know, it's not a lot, but we touched every neighborhood in the city of Shreveport, from Cedar Grove to Cooper Road, Cherokee Park, Moortown, Southern Hill. We even went across the river to Bossier City and did some repairs. We did things from drywall to doorknobs to ceiling fans to smoke detectors, deadbolt locks, and lawn service. These two anti-slip for people who, you know, disabled in the wheelchairs and things like that. So those are the things we did in July, and they didn't charge anything. We gave them their assignments. They went out. They did it. I mean, like champions. And we do have. I couldn't bring everybody. You know, they are working people, so a few showed. Can you come up a second and introduce yourself? She's a contractor here in the city of Shreveport.
My name is Cristina Velasco, and I'm with Skycore LLC. I'm a new contractor imported about almost 3 years ago from Seattle, Washington.
And she is one heck of a contractor, believe me. And these two young ladies, they sit on the committee to help organize this event. Can you come introduce yourself?
Tamika Johnson of Leon Wheeler and Associates.
She ain't had no choice.
And again, I'm Sharon Johnson, local business owner, entrepreneur.
Thank you all so much.
All right, but thank you, Councilwoman Taylor, for giving me the opportunity to come speak on behalf of a lot of untold stir that's going on in our community.
Thank you all
There's
so
a lot
much.
out there.
Thank you all so much. That concludes for me.
Any other council member have any,
I do.
yes, sir. Councilman Jackson.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, about a week ago, we had a tragedy incident in my district where a young lady, Miss Smalls, lost her life. My district has reached out and they're looking for not only accountability, but also for some answers. So I have Mr. Edward Best that's here today that's going to address some of the concerns from the citizen. But I've also asked the owner of that particular entity, Time Out, to also come here today. I appreciate you leading this charge, Mr. Mayor, by hosting a meeting, and Commissioner Chavez, thank you for joining us and being on the front lines of leading this effort as well. So after they finish speaking, I also want the chief to kind of address some of those concerns and answer some questions. I believe this is important for everybody on council to hear because this incident could happen in any one of our districts. So we want to make sure that we understand what has happened and also how we put some things into place to ensure that every entity that we walk in Shreveport remains safe. Thank you. Mr. Best, you can come up to the mic.
I'd like to start by saying thank you to the Shreveport City Council and Dr. Alan Jackson for asking me to come down and speak today. If there's any members of the Mrs. Small's family that is here today, we'd like to give our sincere condolences to anybody that is here on her behalf. This is something that has really touched our area, as Dr. Jackson and Commissioner Chavez and I have spoken about in detail and in length over the last week or so. So I'm going to read a prepared statement for you guys, if you don't mind. As a lifelong resident of the city and a current business owner, I want to share with the council my issue with a major problem in our area around my business. I'd like to note that I am not attempting to call out any single business for this issue, and I'm only sharing what I have witnessed over the last 1.5 to 2 years. The parking lot surrounding the South Park Village Park Shopping Center has become a major problem for the residents and the businesses in the area of the Mansfield Road, Uella Avenue area of Southern Hills. I have personally witnessed these gatherings nights between Thursday and Saturday. As a business owner, as some of you are, I know, you have no set schedule. You work crazy hours, okay? Sometimes 1 or 2 in the morning is when I leave my business. It's very time consuming, but, you know, you have to do it if you're a business owner, you understand that. But leaving there at 1 or 2 in the morning, I have personally witnessed every weekend, I would say for the past year and a half or so, large gatherings in this parking lot, okay? That is not usually an issue, except for there has been major crime that has been going on during these gatherings. And that is at no fault of any local business in that area. What I've noticed is a lot younger crowd, maybe too young to even go into the bar that's right there. So they tend to gather in that area, hang out in the parking lot. I have witnessed drinking, dancing on cars, things like that as I'm leaving. So, I mean, it's in a public area. So that's one of the biggest issues, okay? As we know, if it's young people and alcohol, it tends to become a problem. And that seems to be what has been going on in the area. We've had multiple shootings in the parking lot up there, not just, like I said, I'm not calling out any certain business. I've talked to several of the business owners in that area, and it's a problem for them as well. So that's the biggest things. These continued gatherings being allowed to happen have become a major concern for me and other local businesses and residents. Loud music, cars leaving the parking lot late at night with people on the hood, on the roofs, hanging out of the windows, racing up and down Juella, Mackey Lane in the Summer Grove parking lot behind my business. It's multiple things. Please note that this is in no way a reflection of the overall job that I believe the Shreveport Police Department and Chief Wayne Smith have done. Chief Smith came into an unwinnable situation being 150 officers short. Okay, they cannot police every area all the time. Okay, especially during a major spike in violent crime that we have seen in Shreveport over the last couple of years. I am in no way blaming them because they can only do what they can do, okay? So when I brought this issue up with the parking lot a few months ago with Dr. Jackson, the answer that he was given was a twofold problem. The bar in the area, timeout, can't be expected to police the parking lot of other businesses, which is understandable. The police's response when asked was they can't do anything about private property gatherings until the surrounding businesses complain about the issue. It seems that the surrounding businesses are complaining about the issue. So the question is now, what is going to be done about it? What can we do to ensure that these gatherings aren't pushed from this parking lot to the Whataburger parking lot right there, Willis Knight and Mansfield and Burke Coons, into the Walmart parking lot and other areas in Southern Hills and around the city? I don't have the answer to that question. That's what I'm coming to you, to the council for today, asking Chief Smith, Mayor Arsenault, all you guys, what can we do as District E for Dr. Jackson and Commissioner Chavez, as the city of Shreveport? What can we do to stop this problem? People thought 2 decades ago that Southern Hills was dead when the South Park Mall closed and AT&T left the area. But the Southern Hills community has shown that we are resilient and we are not going anywhere. The Southern Hills Business Association was formed. The Southern Hills Homeowners Association is still alive and well. We are not going to let this issue go by the wayside. We are going to continue to fight this and come to y'all and ask y'all time and time again to please do something about this issue for us. Our local leaders, such as Dr. Jackson and Commissioner Chavez, are doing everything that they can to ensure this is dealt with. But this is going to take more than these two great men, okay? This is an issue that is going to take cooperation from the mayor's office, from Shreveport Police, from Caddo Sheriffs, or anybody else that can step up and help us find a solution to this problem. So please know that we are going to continue to come down here. We are going to continue to come down here and speak and ask y'all to please do something about this issue that we're having. Not just Southern Hills, but all over the city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Jason Heffron, if you can come up to the mic for me.
Excuse me. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council, for allowing me to have this time to speak. Last Friday night, week ago Friday, September 1st, early hours of Saturday morning, the worst thing that has ever happened in my career happened. It's senseless and in no shape, form, or fashion should have happened. I can't express our heartfelt condolences to the Smalls family for what they must be going through, and hope and pray daily that there can be some sort of peace out of this. In addition to that, and the parking lot issues that were spoke about, these are things that we started talking about 2 years ago. I've had conversations with Commissioner Chavez, several of the police officers that are on duty that are in that area several times, what can be done about it. I even go as far as to employ private security inside and employ the off-duty Shreveport police officers on nights where we have large volumes of business, including that Friday night when this incident happened. Several of the times that we have called for help or brought it to their attention, we have been told that they're going to have us shut down, that we are the problem. They do not get involved in the actions that go on within the parking lot parties that these folks refer to it as. Parking lot parties that involve drinking of alcohol, smashing the empty bottles onto the ground, smoking marijuana, loud music, guns, riding on top of the cars, hanging out of sunroofs, fights, and obviously shootings. But yet nothing is done and nothing is enforced. There might be a ticket that's written once or twice, but that's been all that's happened. We know it's an issue, and it's an issue all over the city, and we are here to ask for help that we've been asking for quite some time now and have not gotten. I understand the police department is completely understaffed and underpaid, and I feel for them every day, but this city has an issue that will not go away and only will get worse if we don't do something about it. When they have these parking lot parties, these are people who do not come into timeout. These are people that sit in the parking lot, may be underage, may not be, but they do not come into timeout. They do not pay their money to walk in the door. They do not come to benefit the business in any shape, form, or fashion, but they are allowed to get away with these parties and there's no repercussions. I do everything that I know of as far as having operating cameras with a backup DVR to make sure we have all that. I am not required to provide security or pay the Shreveport police officers to do what they do. I do it to try and make it the safest place that I can. I also hold the liquor license for the Hearst Coliseum. The reason I bring this up is right now I'm applying for an independent concierge license. I turned it in July 24th. As of today, I spoke with Corporal Glass Bradley because I've gotten no response, and the Mudbugs enterprise that I facilitate all the alcoholic sales out there and the Mudbugs organization rely on us. I was told today that there was a meeting being held this afternoon to talk about whether or not to revoke my liquor license. To me, that's completely irrational. Although that license is tied to timeout, the Hearst Coliseum is not at 9064 Mansfield Road. And that organization and I have worked together hand in hand without incident for several years now. And for them to say that my license is up to be revoked because of things that I can't control that I have talked about for 2 years now, to me is completely unacceptable. Not to mention the fact that I turned it in on July the 24th, and I only talked to Corporal Glass Bradley today after trying to reach the office for a week. We have the cameras, we have security guards, we have all that put in place. Since the incident, we've gotten rid of the security that we had and brought in fresh security for fresh eyes. We're implementing single entrance, single exit doors. That way you can't get back in. We're instigating, men will not wear their crossbody bags anymore. Ladies are going to be required to either carry a clear purse of a certain size or a purse of a certain size, like when you go to any of your major arenas. Whatever we can do in order to try and stop something like this from ever happening again is what we will do. But again, I can control only so much. And to be honest with you, businesses can only take so much expense before they become insolvable anymore. I employ between the Hirsch and Timeout probably 30 people. That's 30 people who utilize these jobs to pay their bills, to feed their families, to pay for their medicine, so on and so forth. Threatening my liquor license and threatening the livelihood of those people without any kind of true initiative is unacceptable. They've done nothing wrong. They deserve to be able to make a fair wage, just like the rest of us, just like everybody sitting in this room. They don't have the voice to speak out, and that's what I'm here to talk about. Lastly, I don't ever want to bash the city of Shreveport. I love the city of Shreveport. I've been here pretty much my entire life. I've run restaurants in this town all the way. I mean, I was a busboy at Ralph Gaku's. I ran the Kon-Tiki restaurant for 12 years. I've done this my whole life. This is what I do. This is my job. This is what I hold real valuable to me, is making sure people can have a good time. I really hope that y'all can find a way to launch an initiative to stop these parking lot parties and the unacceptable behavior that's going on in parking lots all over the city, up and down Jewella, up and down Hearn, St. Vincent parking lot, the Whataburgers, the Krogers. Not for us that are there, not only for us that are there right now, which we need it horribly, but Southern Hills is making a comeback. You've got 3 anchor stores that are either open or will be opening. You have the Starbucks, you have Chick-fil-A. The most trending grocery store in the country, Aldi, has broken ground and will be opening. What else can we get to come back to the Southern Hills area if we can control this crime problem? All the foot traffic that we can get. The revenue this provides the city, to me, is the least important of it all. It's the fact of bringing this neighborhood back to where it was, to when the Olive Gardens were there, the Red Lobsters and so on and so forth. And it's going to take a strong fist to make it happen. And I'm here to ask you folks to be that fist. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Smith? Chief, if you can just help us clear up some concerns. The parking lot, we know is privately owned. So I want you to address how do y'all police privately owned parking lots? And I'm asking these questions because we may have to do some legislation at the council level. The owner of that parking lot has communicated with SPD and said he doesn't allow loitering. He wants people that are not going into the business to be gone. He has communicated that consistently. Do we need to pass any more legislations to give your unit more power to do their job? Also, while you're addressing that, let's be candid. With being down 140 officers, your units can't address everything. So is it at their discretion? What happens when they do get somebody that's dancing on the car and they have to take them to jail? Then what happens to the parking lot? Is that parking lot unmanned? Do you have enough patrol to assist with that area? So we need to be candid about the problem and with the possible solutions so the citizens don't have expectations that are not realistic.
Sure. What we're talking about is a small geographical area compared to the entire city. Not only do the business owners and everyone there along that corridor deserve police protection, so does everyone that live in residence all over town that is not there. What can help? Legislation I don't think need to be created because it's already exists. Some years ago, we had difficulty with this very same thing, cruising on Saturday and Sundays, where mass groups of kids gather on business parking lots because the parking lot was available. As you may know, we are very limited in what we can act upon on private property without the owner's permission to do so. Nonetheless, things that are under certain laws, careless and reckless operation, DWIs, those that are under Title 14, we can enforce no matter where it is. So if someone is acting crazy, driving dangerously on a parking lot, it doesn't matter whether it's on the parking lot or private road, we still have the lawful right to confront them and stop it. But anyway, what needs to happen, what we face with on parking lots such as where this incident occurs, there are multiple businesses there that utilize that parking lot. It is not against the law for anyone to drive on that parking lot, to stop. They don't have to go inside the business. It is not unlawful for them to be there. So some years ago, I got with the city court judges, and we found a plan that worked. It has worked for us and worked in other parts of town tremendously, where the proprietor, the owner, whoever controls that entire property, register that property with the Shreveport Police Department. They have to sign an affidavit saying that the officers of the Shreveport Police Department has my authority to act on my behalf in my absence, and that I will, if need be, come to court and testify to that fact. Matter of fact, the North Shreveport Business Association partners with us, and they're the ones who has the signs that sells them to different businesses around town. The owner of that property has to put up a sign at every entrance, and that sign says, this property is registered with the Shreveport Police Department, and trespassing and loitering ordinances will be enforced. When that sign is up, is registered with us, any police officer that passes by or goes on that parking lot or see anything going on, they have that owner's right to engage with that person and ask, why are you here? If you're not here to do business with these businesses, then you must leave. And if you refuse to leave, you are subject to be summoned or arrested for loitering or trespassing. So something does exist that would help and give us the authority to act on those parking lots. And in addition to that, as soon as I found out about the tragedy that occurred and got back and talked with my staff and learned that the business owner does hire 2 off-duty police officers to monitor the parking lot, I met with them and asked what it is that they do and when are they there. And from this day forward, they were plainclothes officers that was there in their plain unmarked vehicles. We're making it a part of our policy from this day forward that in a circumstance like that, you will come to the desk and check out a marked police car so you can be more visible and hopefully be a deterrent for those that may desire to come on there. But that's what we're doing moving forward. The incident occurred inside of the business. I think we all know that. And without giving too many details about what had occurred, I understand that the victim and the suspect were frequent every weekend patrons of that business, and that the catalyst behind it started by some other means, not inside of that business. So I'm not saying that the business was at fault at all, but what I want to say is that incidents that erupt like this or the domestic, just out of the sudden, I don't know much of what the police department can do to stop something like that. We have made, I believe, within the past year, from year to date, over 79 calls from that business or at that location for police assistance. And that is extremely excessive for the amount of calls that generally come from one particular place. 79 or better since August of last year. But we're willing to work with the business owners, whatever it takes to make them safe. All we need is just somebody to contact us and says, I'm the owner of this property and I want to register with the Shreveport Police Department. As simple as that, and we'll get the process going.
Thank you, Chief. Questions? Yes.
That's correct. For service from August last year to August of this year. Name it and you can't miss it. Just a barrage of all kind of calls. Loitering, disturbing the peace, you name it.
And back in the day,
Yes, sir.
You know, how did we address the cruising and the loitering there in Greenwood and Jewel? Did we have, I don't think we had that plan, you know, in place at the time. So
We,
what was our,
we,
plan as far as, getting the owner, that's pretty much where it started back then.
that is exactly where it began, and that's how we eliminated the problem. We began by having special operations each weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, when we knew this was going to take place. Similar to the operation that we have going on downtown right now. We would hire 20, 25 officers, take out our command bus, sit on the corner, and that was their specific mission to address that. And up to date, we still do some of that, just not that large a scale. Zero tolerance was our intent at that point. We made arrests, we towed cars. If you violated the law, then you got, you know, the full brunt of the law. Now it is not concentrated in that one area. We have an operation that takes place every weekend, and it starts and they go to different spots around town, and we follow them wherever they go. The operation is mobile. So when they see them gathering at Greenwood and Jewella, they leave there and go down Jewella, the 70th and Mansfield Road. We follow them there. Leave there and go to Ford Park. Follow them there. Leave there, go to Airport Park. We follow the people wherever they go, because obvious, wherever there's large gatherings are, and as the gentleman said earlier, where there are concentrations of mind and behavior altering substance, it's a recipe for disaster.
So these hotspots, obviously, I just want to make sure that our officers are, for lack of a better word, given permission to use aggressive enforcement on these hotspots. In other words, I'm not out there to violate anybody's rights, but I think business owners that do have chronic issues, or parts of you have chronic issues, these officers have the mindset that this is a problem area, and unless we use aggressive enforcement, the letter of the law enforcement in these situations.
Absolutely. Those that register their property with us, that automatically gives the officer the sense that the property owner is in support of our activities, and that encourages officers, you know, to stop and check out people on parking lot, because we can't just randomly do it just because. We need a lawful reason to do it.
Now, Chief, when these officers that are on off-duty working, when they call for patrol to assist with these large crowds, are they available? I know that's,
Absolutely.
I believe that's District 4. You can kind of speak on that, and I know other things may be happening in the city, as you mentioned, but again, I want to make sure that people understand where we are, and if that's possible. When they call and say, look, we got this going on, and I need a unit to respond, will that happen, and is it based on what, if that's going to actually happen or not?
Whenever an officer calls for assistance, no matter what that is or where they are in our city, if assistance is available, assistance is coming. And there in Area 4 is no different. When the officer calls and says, I need some assistance, if help is available, help is on the way. It may take help a little while to get there, you know, because of circumstances. There just may not be nobody available right now, but somebody is coming as soon as someone is available. Absolutely.
And last question, are the officer trained not to engage with large crowds if they feel like they don't have adequate backup?
Officers should use good judgment. I'll say that. That could be a circumstance where you have no other choice, but officers should use the best of judgment in extreme circumstance. And only that can be dictated by the person who is there actually in that situation. I can't say I would do exactly like you do unless I was there faced with the circumstances that you're faced with right now.
Chief, I have a question for you. The security trailers that we ordered, I know we have 2 on the way. Would that be a good place to put those, since they do go to the real crime center?
Absolutely. We'll be able to put them anywhere where there's a need.
Right.
That is the unique thing about the city being able to purchase things on its own that's not connected to a grant or something else that obligates you to do something. You can do with it whatever you want in your best interest. So yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay, let me ask you this also. If the cameras that the business have, would it help if they registered with the Real-Time Crime Center?
Oh, big time. And thank you so much for bringing that up. And I hope everybody really thinks about that. Right now, we have 996 camera feeds that's coming into RTC. We have a 1,500 capacity. But anyway, with all of those cameras coming in, the ones on the exterior, our people is being trained to recognize a potential hazard. It's one thing to see that something has already happened and send somebody. It's another thing what we're thriving for is people to be able to recognize a potential hazard, send someone before that hazard ever take place, prevent it from occurring altogether.
That would be a great preventive measure. I
Absolutely.
think once everything happens, we come and say, well, what can we do? We need prevention. And I think
Absolutely.
putting those cameras, those trailers would absolutely help.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Chief, has there been any more gatherings since September 1st?
Not to that degree. Not to that degree. I spoke with the officers about that. Not to that degree.
I have a question. Yes, sir.
To my knowledge, it's not. Commissioner Chavez, do you know? No, it's not. Yes, we do. We've been in touch with the park. Oh, you come on up, sir. Come on up. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were here.
I didn't hear my name called out, so Chief, how are you? Randy James.
Pleasure to meet you.
My name's Randy James, 1410 Hahn Avenue in Shreveport. I used to own South Park Village and Main Street right next door. We sold it to the people that have it now. We still manage the property. That's my daughter on a go-kart, that's not. But we do have those signs up, and this is the vacant T-Mobile building. We have that sign all around our properties.
It's not in the right place.
Well,
The courts told us that it have to be at the entrance where someone drive on the property.
we stuck
at
them
the
in other
same height
places too.
As a handicap. Okay.
We'll correct that, but we do have, it is registered, we have signs all over. If they're not in the right place, we'll sure change them real quick. But you have our permission to do anything, just like you do in Shreve City. We have serious problems in Shreve City as well. And, but we did purchase the signs. I was gonna ask for a refund because they weren't working, but, but it is a problem. And I might just real quick add that I've known Jason for quite a long time that operates, the timeout.
Step on up to the mic, Mr.
So I knew Jason quite a long time. Before we agreed to put him in a lease in that property and do the things he's doing, he runs a quality operation, a very clean operation. I knew him at Kontiki. They did a fabulous job over there too. So when he approached us, we didn't have any problem with his character or his ability or whatever, I might add. But I had no clue that we were having such a serious problem in the parking lot with the cruising and all that. It kind of shifts from one area to the, it used to be in Shreve City. We striped the parking lot over in Shreve City here not too long ago, and I went back a few weeks back. Looks like somebody came in and tried to paint it black because there's so many burnouts and donuts and all that. And not being funny, but it's a problem, just like homelessness is. You know, that's really the reason I wanted to come up and talk about the homeless problem as well. When we call, we can't get any response out of the police department. They know them on first name basis, basically, but just like we met with the mayor last Wednesday, I believe it was. Thursday, I had a guy drive in down to Dallas to look at the T-Mobile spot that's vacant. They left because their employees were harassed and scared to death to go to work because of the homeless people. They're so brazen and they're just not afraid of anything because they feel invincible because nobody will do anything about it. So when they left, there was two guys at 5:30 in the afternoon, two white males that were asleep on the, well, laying on the sidewalk. When they walked out about 20 minutes later, one of them was up urinating on the sidewalk, just not trying to cover up, not anything. The very next day, the female manager of, not City Trends, but one of the stores right beside Aaron's there, she walked out. There was a homeless lady out there harassing the customers as they were walking in. They about got into a little incident, she said. She called the police department, and as she did, this lady walks in the double doors, pulls her pants down, and defecates right there in the building. And so when the police come out, they know him by first name, but they won't do anything about it, you know? And again, I thought we put the signs up properly where you have permission to do whatever it takes. And here we are. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other councilmen have any questions?
I just have a comment here. I mean, I understand these MOUs, these signs, and I remember when we did have these. But I really kind of want our businesses to know, and I think Chief, you're in agreement with this, is that, you know, officers' responsibility is to patrol. You know, and if an officer sees something that is just not quite right, or a gathering, you know, they have the responsibility to go on that parking lot and develop probable cause, reasonable suspicion, and maybe probable cause. The signs are great, and I'm all for that. But I know that, you know, we saw a gathering at Veterans Park or any of these other, you know, locations. You know, we get paid to get nosy. I mean, y'all get paid. I used to. We get paid to be nosy and put our nose in other people's business.
Right.
And I just don't want people to think that unless I have a sign, you guys ain't coming, or you know, the police officers are not gonna actively, you know, do patrolling and, you know, kind of visit those particular areas where it just doesn't feel right.
Sure, sure. Well, it is, without a doubt, a different era than probably it was 5, 10 years ago. Things have really, really changed. All right.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, Councilwoman Bo.
Ms. Grady Morrison? Ms. Grady, you gonna come up with your presentation?
Hey, good afternoon, Mayor and council members. I'm Grady Morrison, 846 Erie Street, and this is Pat Starnes with Blue Cross. I'm with Hub Insurance Services, and we've been working with the Healthcare Trust Fund Board for really the last year. About this time last year, I believe y'all were hearing the complaints that there had been an RFP process or there hadn't been an RFP process, and who was going to be the city insurance carrier. Well, this year we did an RFP process. It's gone through, and the Healthcare Trust Fund Board has proposed 3 major changes to the benefits this year. And I believe you got a letter from Mayor Arsenault about that last week. I don't know if everyone had a chance to review the letter. Do you know if y'all received the email or the letter? Okay, so I don't know if you've got any questions for us regarding that letter. There were 3 major pieces to it. The first one the 2 major ones were for Medicare retirees. The first one talked about that if you retired and you were Medicare eligible, that you needed to apply for Medicare Part B, which would then make you Medicare primary. When we did our benchmarking earlier in the year, what we found was that most other municipalities and cities actually already had this in place, where they're requiring people to be Medicare primary if they're eligible. And it's only if you're eligible. There are some people that will retire and will be over the age 65 and they won't be eligible. So again, it won't apply to those. The second major piece that would save the city about $3 million is to make the Medicare Advantage Plan, the Blue Cross Blue Shield Medicare Advantage Plan, the only plan that would be available for Medicare primary retirees. We actually put that plan in place for January 1st of this year, and we've got about 200 people that are on it. We did a survey halfway through the year and got positive responses. So the people who took it last year have been pleased with it. What the change this year would be that this is the only plan available if you're a Medicare primary retiree.
So Willis Knighton is going to accept this plan?
Yeah, so Willis Knighton actually, Pat, when was it?
January.
In January of last year, they joined the Blue Cross Medicare Advantage plan. And the third one is an increase of 1% to employees and retirees, except those on the Medicare Advantage plan, an increase of 1% to their portion of the plan. And the rates were actually on the next page of the letter. So the plan is supposed to, the city is supposed to pay only 70% of actives, but you can see by the attachment, the city pays quite a bit more than 70%. Increasing at 1% is just trying to get it a little bit closer to what the city had originally put in their ordinance. And Pat Starnes is the one who actually handles the Medicare Advantage plan, so if you have any specific questions. Okay.
Anyone else? Thank you. Yes.
I'm going to ask, and I believe Councilman Jackson will agree with me on this. Saturday, we had a Shreveporter that was injured in the GSU and LSU football game. And I'm going to ask for you all to keep Mr. Jaquavius Richmond in your prayers. He's a graduate of Woodlawn High School, and he had severe injuries in that game. And so he is being treated at Our Lady of the Lake Hospital. The staff at coaching staff at LSU, as well as just other members of the Baton Rouge community, of making sure that he receives the best care as possible. So I just want to make sure that we keep the Richmond family, since he is a Shreveporter, in your prayers, as we pray that he makes a full recovery.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Mayor, do you have any awards, recognition of distinguished guests not to exceed 15 minutes today?
Mr. Chairman, I don't really, except to let you know that several of the persons who are before you for confirmation are present today. Mr. Jim Walsh, Mr. Kyle McInnes, I see Mr. Bruce Roberts, Mr. Parker Brown. Is Mr. Ricky Hall in the audience? Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hall. And Ms. Kelly Nelson. All right. So all of your, except for Attorney Audrius Reed, who was not able to be here, she is able to be here tomorrow if you would like to visit with her, but they are present for you if you have any questions concerning their appointments. And obviously, Ms. Gracia Degage is here.
All right. Mr. Mayor, can I give you a call regarding this board?
Can you give me a call? Of course.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any other communications related to city business or any other awards or recognition?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does any member have any questions for Mr. Green with property standards?
Mr. Green?
Yes, ma'am.
There was an issue at Peach Street Apartments with the garbage being spread all over the apartment complex. Did you receive any information from Republic?
Yes, ma'am. They will be out tomorrow or no later than Wednesday to get the garbage bins in.
Did they speak to what the delay was?
They're scheduling.
Okay. And I want to take this time to thank you for assisting with some areas of cleanup in the Allendale area and Lakeside area. Mr. Mayor, I do need to talk to you about those storm drains in those areas that need to be clear, and several illegal dumping sites that we have in a lot of those areas, especially around Exposition and Park Street and Denver, and some on Sydney Street in the MLK area. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else for Mr. Green? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Green. Everyone should have received the Revenue Collection Plan Implementation Report. Public hearing, there are none. Mr. Dork, would there be any legislation added tomorrow?
I'm not aware of any, sir.
Thank you. On today, we have an item to be added, and of course, after we have to have unanimous vote on it. The city attorney's office has requested to go in executive session to discuss the following matter: security pertaining to police body cameras and their operation. And I would need a motion and a second that we would go in an executive session. But at this particular time, before we do it, is there anyone present who would speak for or against this being added to the agenda for today?
Good evening. John Glover, 9100 Walker Road, Shreveport, 71118. Just want to know, if it is that we say yay to you going into executive session, will that be at the end of the meeting, or will you do it before the end of the meeting?
We're going to do it, and after we get the motion and second, we're going to go in executive session for about 10 minutes, and we'll be back.
Okay then, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You said this is about the body cameras?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, wouldn't we want the public to know since it's a security issue?
No, not with this. This is coming from the city attorney. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilwoman Taylor. Second by Councilman Jackson. Any questions or comments? Mine is down, mine is yay. Yes.
Motion fails. 4-1.
Then since this item failed, we will not be able to go into executive session. Mr. Mayor, as I've talked to you and we've talked to the city attorney, seeing that this has failed, would you like for this to still be publicized, or would you like for it not to be publicized?
My preference is that it be dealt with in executive session, but it will need to be added to the agenda another time.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Getting used to this stuff. I think what the objection is that, and I should have objected as well, is that if it's 10 minutes.
It may not be 10 minutes.
But it is of such urgency that we deal with it now, or can we just move it to the end of the agenda? I mean, the end of the agenda, so these people can be on their way. I think that was my concern initially.
Okay. Are there any objections to dealing with it?
I mean, maybe we can just, I don't know what the procedure is, but, I mean, I'd like to hear about it, but I don't want to just jump right in there, because you never know how long executive sessions are going to be. And I'd rather put this on the tail end of it, not right in the middle.
To be clear, right now, we're just voting to add it to the agenda. And executive session would be at the end, where it is in the standard meeting agenda. So what we are voting on now, or what we just voted on, was whether to add it to the agenda itself. It would not be addressed until the end.
That
Would
motion.
not have been addressed until the end.
Yes, sir. That motion failed, so what do we do what do we do?
I'd like to put it back on there if that's the case. Then I think there was a miscommunication, misunderstanding.
Okay.
It's a motion to reconsider.
Second.
Motion by,
The motion would have to be,
Take 7 votes to move it to executive session. It did fail, and it's gonna fail again.
It takes.
7.
it has to be unanimous. It has to be the members present, and with these members present today.
Okay.
and also only the prevailing side can put the motion back on to be reconsidered.
So you would have to make the motion, Councilman Teleferry. You
Okay,
are
I
on
make the
prevailing.
motion to put it back on the agenda for vote.
What I was saying is that the person that voted against it, that made it fail, is what I'm need to hear from before we go through this process again.
Right. And I still have the same vote, no.
Okay.
All right. Today, we will hear public comments on non-agenda items and as well as agenda items.
Ken Craft.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Ken Kraft, 157 Archer Avenue, Shreveport 71105.
Use that mic, Mr. Craft, the smaller mic.
Wrong mic. Okay. Thank you. I'd like to express my sentiments for 9/11. And y'all know what happened 22 years ago on that Tuesday, so let's not go into it, but let's just remember the first quick point I'd like to make is maybe in May of June of next year, after the April 24th bond election, let's seriously think about a city charter review committee. We last did that in '06. Bossier City last week appointed one to study and review their charter. And as a quick reminder, the Caddo Commission has in its charter a requirement to do a quadrennial review. That's the second thing. More importantly, as a new school crossing guard, I enjoy it. I like helping the children cross the street. The pay for the Shreveport guards is, as I appreciate it, paid 50-50 between the city of Shreveport and the Caddo Parish School Board. So each is paying $5.25 an hour towards our salary. But make a guess. If I ask you about a Target clerk on his or her first day, a trainee at Target, a part-time Shreveport 911 dispatcher, who makes more? Well, the answer is the Target clerk makes $15 an hour. Our part-time dispatcher makes $12.38 an hour. The Bossier Crossing guards make $33.94 a day for 2 hours, so they make about $17 an hour. So a Bossier Crossing guard makes several dollars an hour more than our dispatchers, who have to make life and death decisions about car wrecks and heart attacks and fires. And so before we can even think about raising the pay of the crossing guards, we need to really do something about our part-time dispatchers at 12 along Texas Avenue. I had a nice brief visit with my Councilman Teleferro this morning, and he and I agree on a lot of this. Let's do what we can. When the 13% raise went into effect, it's my understanding that none of the part-time employees received it. It was for full-time folks. There are part-time employees in SPAR and Public Works, the crossing guards, the dispatchers. So the next pay raise, let's not neglect part-time individuals. And the final thing I'll say is whatever y'all do with the clerk of council position, it is extremely important position. I think we've got to make a sound, prudent decision on that position, whatever we do. Thank you.
That concludes public comments.
We will have executive appointments to consider tomorrow. There are no items on the consent agenda for introduction or to be adopted. Mr. Dark, would you proceed with regular agenda legislation?
166 of 2021 is postponed until the next meeting. 111 authorizes the mayor to sign an agreement between the city and the Revel. I believe that's for a number of things that go with the Revel, the Cork and Brew festivals as well, which are a partnership with Downtown Shreveport Unlimited. We spend roughly $231,000 a year, including some in-kind per year, and this is a 3-year agreement. 112 ratifies the mayor's signature on the contract for storm debris removal with Ceres Environmental Services that you had asked us to put on just as an abundance of caution to make sure that all the procedures were followed. 113 congratulates Pastor CJ for being sworn in as president of the National Association of Gospel Radio Incorporated. That resolution is put on the agenda by Councilmember Taylor and Councilmember Jackson.
Mr. Dark,
Yes, ma'am.
could you please make sure on Resolution 111 that each of these entities understand that they have to receive cash?
Okay.
Are there any questions or comments on any of these items? Mr. Dark, would you proceed with introduction of resolutions not to be adopted prior to September 26, 2023?
Resolution 114 authorizes a contract between the city and the Independence Bowl Foundation. Basically, it's a 4-year deal that would correspondingly end, I believe, on the 50th anniversary of the bowl. We pay $140,000 cash to the bowl that you appropriate through, I believe, the Riverfront Fund. And then there are other game day provisions and things like that that the city provides at its cost. 115 authorizes the mayor to execute a cooperative endeavor agreement with Caddo Parish. In order for us to get the 75% state reimbursement, the state only deals with the parish, so we in effect become a subcontractor there. So this is an agreement that allows us to do that. All we'll do is submit our bills through the parish, and the parish will get the reimbursement and write us a check. 116 retains the services and appropriates funds to compensate a special legal counsel pursuant to 109A. That's sponsored by Councilmember Butcher.
Are there any questions or comments on any of these items? If not, Mr. Dark, would you proceed with introduction of ordinance not to be adopted prior to September 26, 2023?
Okay, we have a lot of these, and this is kind of the annual time of the year when department heads have put together most of their submittals for the 2024 budget, and part of that is they submit estimates on what they believe they're going to spend this year. And what we do is when we get those, we compare them to what's in the current budget and where adjustments to the budget need to be made so that we keep the budget at the end of the year in compliance with what we actually spend. That's why we come to you with all these. So there's a whole stack of them. I'll try to keep them straight. The way they're set up, they're pretty much single-purpose items, so hopefully we can get through them fairly easily. 93 amends the general fund budget to appropriate the storm damage revenues and expenses. The whole storm damage process cost us about $3.2 million, and just under $2.4 million of that is going to be eligible for reimbursement. Most of the money is going to the solid waste fund. There's a little bit of it, about I think $420,000, I believe, going to SPAR because they had 2 different contracts, one for debris removal at the golf courses and one that's still ongoing for debris removal in parks and on the parkway and places like that. 94 is somewhat of a companion to the other. It receives the storm damage money that is coming in to the general fund. It also appropriates another $1.7 million to make the solid waste fund balance this year. Their cost for solid waste collection salaries ended up over budget, and absolutely their cost for landfill disposal ended up over budget. So those things are being, some of that is having to come from the general government reserve. The sort of most difficult one is 95. We've revised revenue estimates pretty substantially for the general fund to reduce the net revenues by just a little over $16.5 million. We had less fund balance than we thought, mostly because of an accounting quirk where the ARP money, even though we have it in hand, cannot be counted as revenue until we actually spend it. And so some of that ended up, we thought we had a much bigger fund balance than we do. We do have additional revenue in sales tax and permits, and oil and gas revenue and EMS that will help to offset some of that. This actually, on paper, will bring the reserve down to just less than 7 million, and it's going to go down a little lower than that from a couple of the other ordinances you have. But please understand that our estimates for the end of the year show an end-of-year fund balance in excess of 25 million because we have unspent money in other places. 96 amends the budget for the mayor's office with no net change. It reduces salary expenses to offset additional office supply money because new administrations with new stationery and things like that, and a little bit for other charges for a couple of city memberships, and also because I got paid out of contractual services the time I was a contractor, so we'll be offsetting that. But again, it's no net change in revenue. No net change in expenditure. 97 for finance, again, is no net change. The difference here is that we have historically, or at least in recent years, accounted for the expenses that we have in collecting delinquent property taxes. We've just netted them out of revenue, and that's not what you're supposed to do from an accounting standpoint. You're supposed to book the entire revenue and then have an expense account for the cost, and that's what this amendment will do. Again, it takes unused salary money and puts it into contractual services so we can do that. 98 amends the HR budget. They took over benefits from finance, I believe sometime earlier this year or at the end of last year, and there's some remodeling going on the 5th floor to give them offices, and we are trying not to move all their nasty old furniture into this. So the HR director had asked for some funds for some, not fancy, but at least new furniture. So that's, I think it's about $30,000 there. 99, again, no net change. Fire department, $50,000 from salaries into contractual for EMS professional services. 100, no net change again. About 500,000 from police salaries being moved to pay for parts and contract supplies or contract labor for vehicle maintenance. 101 is the city marshals, moves 55,000 from salaries to supplies, 20 of that for fuel and 35 for contractual services, but they're taking that out of salaries. 102 is city courts, 50,000 from salaries into contractual services, mostly I think for utility and telephone costs. 103 is IT, general fund. This one's taken 183,000 from salaries to replace one of the backup storage data units that runs a lot of our main city operations and applications. The IT director reported that this particular device is beginning to degrade. We are trying to get it fixed or trying to get it replaced before we end up losing some data. So that's what that one is about. We may also, before this one passes finally, you all got an email, I think, earlier today from Ms. Creel talking about what we need to do for the audiovisual in this building. We're going to make sure if there are costs there that need to be covered, at least our part of it, that they may well get amended into this before we end up passing that one. 104 is property standards, moves $85,000 from salaries to supplies to pay for postage and fuel. That was 104. 105 moves $800,000 in public works from salaries. $700,000 of that basically pays for the fact that we probably didn't budget enough money for electricity, particularly the streetlight electricity, and for some contract equipment maintenance. 106 is a tough one. SPAR has had a really difficult year in terms of lots and lots of expensive building repairs and things that they had to take care of. And even with being able to take a good bit of money from their salary accounts, we're going to have to add, I think, about $1,265,000 net to the SPAR budget to pay for all these repairs, all the contract work, all the roofs, and everything else that they've had to do. We're going to try to take a little different approach in that in the 2024 budget and try to put in some money to cover some of these because we know there are going to be some more. We have enough old buildings to take care of that, but this is what it'll take to make this one work. 107 amends the solid waste fund to make sure that it covers all the operating expenses and collection salaries and all those things, and we talked, it has a companion earlier. 108 amends the water and sewer budget to move 2.6 million from salaries to cover about a $500,000 unbudgeted for chemicals and a little over 2 million unbudgeted for electricity. 109 is for airports. It moves 400,000 from salaries to funds for utilities and telephone costs. Now, one of the things before we move away from these, the way budgets were done this year, because we essentially budgeted for almost all positions, whether they were filled or otherwise, has offered the opportunity to do a lot of these amendments where it was no net cost. The budget you're likely to see next year will do much less of that, so that we'll have to be a lot more careful about what we spend and about how we appropriate, and try to make sure we don't have as many of these, because we're not going to have the funds as easily to do these things as we've been able to do this year. 110 and 111 are noise ordinances, and I would probably defer here to any questions you might have to the city attorney or to Manushka, who apparently is the lead author of this one, for which we're most grateful. But basically what I believe they do, 110 amends Chapter 58 to establish certain procedures in the police department for how the noise issues would be enforced, and 111 basically sets up a provision for how noise would be measured out in the world. So City Attorney Marcus Edwards is here, and Manushka Descage is here, in case you have any questions on those.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if Attorney Edwards could come and give a brief overview of the revised ordinance. And if you could list the changes to this particular ordinance in the simplest of terms, because I know it was a very complex ordinance, I would greatly appreciate it.
I'm going to toss to Attorney Manushka Gracia Degage, who took the pen on this one and has my full support.
Sure. So obviously we have a lot of intricate changes that have been instituted, but the major, to put it as succinctly as I can, is we kind of changed or delegated the enforcement portion strictly to SPD instead of the designee from engineering. There is still a small portion that engineering still is over in terms of noise management plan and anything dealing with significant noise generators, but everything else is primarily delegated to SPD. We also instituted a permitting process for any entertainment venues, or any venue for that matter, that desires to have outdoor music. And so they would have to first already be permitted to have an outdoor patio, and then there are specific processes now in place, presumably, for them to obtain a permit to play music outside from a speaker or any type of sound amplification device. And so those guidelines are very clear about how they can play, how loud they can play that music, when they can play it, where the speakers have to be located in order for them to play that music. There's also an appeals process for anybody who applies for a permit and who does not get that permit. They also have an appeal process that's similar to the ABO appeal process if they so desire to appeal any denial of permit applications.
Let me ask, where is it that they apply for the permit?
That is also through SPD.
Okay, so it'd be through SPD.
SPD, but of course, they have the option to designate it to somebody specifically in their department to deal with that, but it would be through the SPD office. We also bifurcated the measurement portion or the enforcement portion of the ordinance versus the procedural noise measurement, because part of what made the current ordinance so dense is because there was a lot dealing with the measurements and how SPD, or right now the engineering department, measures the noise, and it was very lengthy, unnecessarily lengthy. So what we did was move that portion to Chapter 78, which is what CAO Dark was talking about, where we put that in Chapter 78 to deal with the measurements, since SPD and engineering, they have the expertise and they know what it is to how to measure noise and so on and so forth. And so we just let Chapter 58 deal strictly with the enforcement, the permitting process that goes with the noise ordinance.
What are the penalties?
The penalties are, well, right now I think The ordinance as it reads was $500 for any violation, or I think 30 days of imprisonment. But right now we kept that 500, but that is a floor. And so with every violation, it increases. I think the second is 1,000, and after that, I think it's 1,500. And then the imprisonment, the term for imprisonment also increases with each violation. And I will also add, with the permitting process for the outdoor music venues, they also have violations. If they violate, that impacts whether they're allowed to renew their permits because it's for a year, presumptively for a year. And so if they violate, whether by putting their speakers in the wrong place or changing something about what they originally put in their permit application, putting the music too loud, or if SPD has to repeatedly go out there and say, hey, your music is too loud, or they're not abiding by what was originally in the permitting application process, they also now are in violation, and they also are subjected to those same penalties as well.
Is the permitting process yearly, or once you've been granted a permit, then you have the permit?
It's required to be renewed yearly, but as long as nothing changes in your application, it's renewed. You just put an application and say, hey, everything's the same, and it gets renewed. But if there are any changes, even before the renewal period comes up, you have to notify SPD saying, hey, we've changed where we put our speakers, or we've changed something about our venue that impacts the noise or impacts the music. You have to notify whoever in SPD is over that. You have to notify them that there's a change in your permitting
So those
process.
particular entities that already have permits, they already grandfathered in?
That is something we're still working through in terms of that. I'm not sure if we want them to be grandfathered in or have to apply, but presumably probably apply just so we can start the process over for everybody.
I would think that for the most part, just like our liquor stores were grandfathered in, when they didn't have to go in and apply or reapply, and those particular clauses weren't for them, then we wouldn't extend the same courtesy to those that already have rooftops, providing that they would have to apply, that they would be responsible in complying with the noise ordinance because their property is already designed for outdoor music.
That's something that we are amenable to make that revision in the ordinance to make it that way.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Mr. Dart, would you proceed with ordinance on second reading and final passage?
Sir, ordinance 74 has been postponed a couple of times. This is the encroachment on King Place. I guess we will find out from Mr. Butcher if they're ready to proceed tomorrow. I do not personally know. 2023 is appropriating the $75,000 this parish had promised to give us for police work. I need to get with Commissioner Johnson, and he and I keep missing each other. If I can't get with him before tomorrow, we'll postpone again.
He's here.
Is he here?
He's here.
Maybe we can talk after the meeting, and we can make all this work.
All right.
That would make it great. 90 closes and abandons a strip of property next to 1010 Marshall to fix a discrepancy that happened when this strip was supposed to have been abandoned 100 years ago. MPC's approved that one. 91 is zoning case C-23-125C, property on the north side of Hillary Huckabee Avenue near David Rains from C2 to C3 for a contractor's office for a business that's already there, I believe. MPC unanimously denied this item, and again, as you've had recently, if that is also your wish, you would need to make a motion to approve tomorrow and then vote it down.
Yep, I think they're gonna bring their attorneys here tomorrow.
Okay. And then the last one is 23-123C. This is property on Belmead near Uri Drive from R17 single family to urban corridor zoning for a restaurant. I know Mr. Talfair had some questions. I don't know if they've been resolved or whether this is something you're going to be ready to proceed on or not tomorrow.
Thank you. Any questions on any of these items? If not, Madam Clerk, is there any table legislation to be removed from the table today?
There's not.
We have no property standards or ABO appeals to consider today. We have no MPC or ZBA appeals to consider tomorrow. Madam Clerk, are there any other appeals?
No, sir.
Are there any reports from officers, boards, and committees? Madam Clerk, is there a clerk's report?
There will be one tomorrow.
Executive session, none. If there's nothing else to come before, we have a special meeting, and we will make a motion to move in the special meeting at this time, right, Madam Clerk?
You said what?
Ma'am?
What she
We have
said.
to adjourn this meeting
That's
in
what I
order
was
to go
about to-
into.
Right.
Are
I
we
need to
going
say something for your
to,
adjourn, though.
there are additional communications. Do you want to do that tomorrow? Okay.
You have additional communications. Are you going to do those regarding the clerk? Are you going to do those communications tomorrow? Or are you going to do those communications today?
I'll get direction from, that's all on my agenda, as to executive session. Do we do them today or tomorrow?
It's up to you, but we can do them tomorrow.
All right.
What is the specific item for? Is it regarding the employment status of the clerk of council?
That's the question on the floor. Yes, sir.
Who were you asking?
Whoever is that put it on the agenda.
The author of it, yes.
I'd prefer to discuss it tomorrow.
All right. If there's nothing else,